The Jersey Swap podcast is sponsored by Apollo Home. Folks, spring storms can be a stressful time for homeowners. If you need any help with sump pumps or yard drainage, pick up the phone and contact Apollo Home. They are offering a free consultation to all CST listeners. Give them a call, send them a text, or book online at apollohome.com. The Jersey Swap podcast is also sponsored by Beyond Exercise. Beyond Exercise is a local physical therapy and fitness business that helps people stay active and injury free. In fact, they help some of our local MLS, MLS Next, and FCC Academy players with their health and performance needs. Check out their suite of services at gobeyondexercise.com. All right, folks, welcome back to the Jersey Swap podcast here under the CST umbrella. Today, we're looking a little bit more into the future, finding a surprising connection to the past. We beat two MLS teams on the way to the 2017 U.S. Open Cup semifinals. One of them was the team that we playing this weekend, and the other was coached by the team that we play this weekend. That's right, the well-awaited reunion between Gregg Berhalter, who is 0 for 1 against your FC Cincinnati. Chicago Fire hosting us this weekend. Team that arguably sent them packing coming their way. With us this week, we have Alex Campbell, host of the CHGO Fire podcast. He also, I believe, covers a little bit of Chicago Stars in there as well. Thanks very much for joining us another time from the Second City.
Thanks so much for having me, Jeff. Always good to be here to talk about a team that, of course, I had the good fortune of seeing in person for part of that Open Cup run back in 2017. I was at the Cincinnati Columbus Crew game, the first of the rivalry that would become known later as Hell is Real. So that was certainly a memorable fandom experience. I was not able to be at the Fire edition or the Red Bull edition of that run, unfortunately. But yeah, no, we'll always have a special place in my heart for USL Championship era FC Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's going to be a little hard to follow things in the U.S. Open Cup this year. At least, locally, no Ohio teams represented. Are Chicago in there this year?
They are this year, and I think they're going to take it probably pretty seriously. In addition to the Fire, the other team that I think is kind of the one to watch in that is Charlotte, given the expectations that they have for this season, and that on paper they are the best team in that field. But I fully expect the Fire will take that very seriously and give everything they can to try to win that thing.
Yeah, and if you want to take it uber local, we've got Lou City still in it. Indy 11 playing tonight against the Miami FC. Still a lot going on, but it's nice to reminisce. But let's at least go to where our teams are at this moment. So first of all, how are things going with All City Network?
I think it's always growing and changing, and the sports media space is a tough one. It's a competitive one. Our Blackhawks guys just finished up their season last night as that team missed the playoffs again. Bulls guys have a big night ahead of them as the Bulls are trying to avoid going out in the play-in round for yet another season. There's a lot of excitement around the Bears coming up. The baseball teams, not so much for varying reasons, and the soccer teams currently heading in very, very different directions. It's a bit of a bizarre time to be covering soccer in Chicago, because somebody I know put it a few weeks ago that there was a time where the Stars and the Red Stars were kind of the relief from the monotony and the struggles of the Fire, and that's now very much flipped in a way as the Stars struggle pretty mightily while the Fire seem to be on an upward trajectory.
Yeah, you talk about the Chicago Stars. I'm a little miffed that they took out the red part of the Chicago Red Stars, but I mean, beggars can't be choosers, but it felt like it was something that gave them some distinction.
Yeah, I mean, we'll never know for sure. There's plenty of jokes to go around about why they may or may not have dumped the red in front of the Stars in the name. It's just been a strange several months. The rebrand, I think, fell pretty flat. There wasn't really any meaningful business done in the off season. Mallory Swanson is nowhere to be found or seen, and the longer that goes on with that explanation, the stranger it becomes. They did finally win a game over the weekend. Yeah. They went to PayPal Park out in San Jose and beat Bay FC thanks to a brace from Ludmila, who's an excellent Brazilian international. And I think they're going to figure some things out in terms of just stabilizing the ship a bit, but it's just not a roster that's capable of competing at the top end of that league right now. And so, it's one of several factors in the Fire having kind of, especially this year, a bit of a unique opportunity to draw some eyeballs.
Yeah, they get their opportunity this year. The Fire are certainly different, a complete beast altogether compared to the past few years. I mean, the biggest get you can say is Triple G. Gregg Berhalter is now your head coach. There were smoke signals that he would be a shoo-in for the job. What was the local media's initial reaction to this? Maybe even the fans' initial reaction to him being brought in?
I think everybody's reaction was pretty positive, but to your point, it seemed so obvious that when it was official, it was like, oh yeah, of course. Like, he lives here, he's knows Chicago, he's been here for 7 or 8 years at this point with his family. He's got one daughter who's still in high school. He'd been out of a job for a little while. There had been, talk that he wanted to get back in and that he had interviewed for a couple of jobs, including Club America in Mexico. And yeah, ultimately, I think it just made way too much sense. The Fire were willing to give him what he wanted, which included the sporting director role as well, and a lot of control, which on the
Mhm.
one hand in modern MLS, I think makes a lot of fans and teams a little nervous. You
Yeah,
look at
yeah.
Peter Vermees kind of being the last of that breed in a lot of ways, and the way that has gone in recent years in Kansas City. But things have been so bad for the Fire. Really, the idea that the only way anything could go was up, and I think his recruitment's been both good and interesting so far since taking over in that job. So, I mean, at least for now, I think everybody's pretty happy with it. Um, I think maybe this is us evolving as a soccer community quickly, but there's not a whole lot of USMNT anger
Mm.
sentiment about Berhalter, and anybody who thinks he's somehow terrible because he couldn't make roughly the 15th best team in the world as good as France. Um, so no, I think he's endeared himself a lot. He's a total soccer nerd, which I love, and is as a guy who's really willing to talk ball and talk shop. And if you ask him a soccer question, you get a soccer answer. So yeah, I mean, again, there's been some bumps along the way, no doubt about that. But I would say he's got a lot of leeway among the fans, and that everybody's reaction has been generally pretty positive.
I think in general, if you're going to bring a coach in, you want to have somebody who's been at the top. I mean, not necessarily been, maybe atop the table, but he's got some gold, in CONCACAF competitions. He's got some evidence that he's done well with the crew. You've got a pretty good coach there. And I guess it felt that it was a good transition to move on from on again, off again head coach Frank Klopas. I mean, did it always feel like Klopas was the stepping stone?
Frank was a year and a half interim coach. I mean, they
Mm,
gave him the title of head coach, but truthfully, Frank did not think he was going to be the head coach last year.
mm,
Frank Klopas's expectation is he was the interim to finish out 2023,
mhm.
and that a new full-time head coach was being brought in for the next season, and then that just didn't happen. And so, yeah, the Fire all of last season felt like a waste. It
Mhm,
felt like nothing was going anywhere, nothing was progressing. Frank's a great guy. I like Frank a lot, but just again, he's a guy who loves the club as much or as more than anybody. But just he's not the sort of guy that you're gonna in modern MLS be the kind of guy who's gonna have this broader soccer vision and be a guy who's interested in taking on that big, huge task. And that's not a discredit to him at all. I think again, Frank knows where his strengths are. He's still around the club. Berhalter has been fine with him being around. And I think
mhm.
Frank continues to be a really important resource, especially for younger players making their way through. But yeah, everybody knew long before last season ended that there was going to be a new hire made in that coming off season.
Yeah, and so bringing in Triple G, um, a lot of people will say that they know his style, that they know how he's played the U.S. team, but this is still club compared to country. It's a lot different, a lot different pieces. How does this team style change under Berhalter?
I mean, I think for one thing, they have a distinct kind of style now, which is something they haven't really had as long as I've been around this team. You can see if you're a U.S. men's national team astute watcher in recent years, there's a lot of similarities going on. He wants to play out from the back. He wants to hold possession. He wants to get the fullbacks high in the attack. He wants his wide players tucking into the half spaces and supporting the midfield at times. He wants the midfield to be mobile and interchangeable, and he's going to try to create opportunities for a box poaching striker. I mean, there's a lot of similarities there. But again, that takes time to learn. And we saw that week 1 in Columbus where, the Fire gave up 4 goals because they kept coughing the ball up in their own defensive third. And that's improved already. And it's been a little tough because the Fire have had so many injuries. So guys aren't able to get live game reps as much as Berhalter, I'm sure, would like. But no, there's a definitive style. And I think fans are encouraged just to see that there is an identity before anybody gets too worried about, is this identity working or is it the right identity for this group of players?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, looking at that first game, I think everybody has a mulligan in the first game. I mean, we had it a few years ago. We lost 5-0 at at Austin. So it's like it's one of those things where the first game always seems to be just get everybody in place, see what pieces move. Since then, pretty decent. I mean, 3 big road wins. You going to Vancouver, and say what you will about the CCC and Vancouver's participation in it. Winning 3-1 on the road there is an impressive win. But last week was also, I think, more impressive. You popped a clean sheet against arguably the best composed team in the league. A 0-0 draw against Miami. Were you at the game? What can you really tell us about that game in particular?
It was interesting. Of course, in Chicago, we're very jaded at this point about the Lionel Messi experience because, of course, year 1, fans were misled to believe that he was going to be there,
right.
and then
Yeah.
of course he wasn't, and lots of people got pretty angry about that, given the amount of money they had spent. Attendance last year was good, but not great because he had been dealing with some injuries, and it was kind of known he wasn't going to be there. But Suarez, Busquets, Jordi Alba, so it's like this is still a cool show, but 2 years ago, the Fire won that game easily. Miami won it easily last year. And so I was honestly a little surprised. They sold out Soldier Field. It was a new record attendance for the Fire. I think a lot of that was probably ticket sales in the couple of days leading up to the game once everybody was able to, really be confident in the fact that Messi was going to be there and be at the game. So, yeah, it's great to see the stadium full. I mean, again, it speaks to what lots of people talk about the soccer interest in this city and can the Fire tap into that? The game itself, I mean, you've got a lot of these guys in their mid to late 30s who were playing their 4th game in less than 2 weeks, and it showed. Messi looked tired. Suarez looked tired. Miami looked like they were conserving a lot of energy. Their only clear-cut chances in the whole game were a really bad giveaway by the Fire 3 minutes in, which Chris Brady made a great save on from a Messi shot. And then Messi rings the crossbar twice with free kicks, one of which Chris Brady made an absolutely incredible fingertip save to keep out of the back of the net. Fire had their chances. They should have won it late. The game it was interesting. The game was pretty stagnant. And in the last 10 minutes, both teams were clearly trying to grab a winner. Marin Haile Selassie should have tapped in from about 8 yards out after some great work by Jonathan Bamba. All in all, it's a good point against Miami. You'll take the point. It's the first clean sheet of the season for the Fire, but they still haven't won a home game yet. And so there is, I think, that level of disappointment and that, how much of a difference does it make a 0-0 draw versus a 1-0 win in convincing people who showed up in Miami gear to come back next week?
Yeah, that's a tough one to say. I was going to bring this up later on, but you did mention Chris Brady, the current goalkeeper between the sticks. For the longest time, it had been Gaga Slonina. And so some comparisons have been made here. In our CST Slack channels, we've had some arguments that he's actually better than Slonina. Do you feel the same way? What are your thoughts about Brady's performances so far?
So I think in the comparison, there's the biggest thing you have to note is that Chris just turned 21, so he's still crazy young for a goalkeeper.
Plenty of age on him, yeah.
But Slonina was 19 when he left. And then it has been bumpy since. He's had some not ideal spots. He's been dealing with a still lingering hand injury that was the reason he was on loan for the first half of the season at Barnsley in England, and he picked up an injury around November or so, I believe. His loan was ended, mutually between Barnsley and Chelsea, and he is still yet to play for any of Chelsea's youth teams on any sort of rehab assignment since that. So it's kind of quietly bubbling in the background, but yeah, there's some concern right now about what's going on there and how serious an injury he has suffered to his hand. And again, that's, going to be something to watch come the summer when he, again, this is a guy who's just not getting games. He was on a bad team in Belgium last season. He was on a bad team in England for the first half of this year. Just in hindsight, I wonder if he regrets it. I mean, Chelsea forked out 8 figures for an 18-year-old goalkeeper. And if you're an MLS team, you're going to say yes to that every time. That was, that was more money than they thought they would get. And it was from a bigger club than they thought would come in.
Mm-hmm.
Between him and Brady, when they were younger, the scouting report always is that Brady is a better shot stopper, but that Slonina is a better rounded player, that he can play with his feet a bit more, that he's his awareness is a bit better, his positioning is a bit better. And we've seen Chris improve on all those areas. I mean, right now, Chris is the better goalkeeper. That's not really a question, but I think that's mostly down to the fact that Chris is starting games week in and week out. Certainly some here in Chicago are calling for him to get a USMNT call-up. That might be muddled a bit because he is eligible through a grandparent to play for Scotland, and they have, reportedly sniffed around a bit. So it feels like that is going to come to a head sooner rather than later if he keeps playing particularly well. But the other choice is going to be, what path does he want to take? Are the Fire, is everybody okay if he were to leave after this season? Should he play really well the whole year if the Fire can, get some other European team to pay good money? Or does Chris want to stay local? Is he going to look at what happened with Gaga and say, maybe Europe one day, but for now I want to stay home? So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see. I think Chris has been the beneficiary in a lot of ways of going second through this process, because Gaga was such a guinea pig in a lot of ways, that, again, there's positives and negatives to that, certainly. And so I think Chris is in a position where he's had more time to hone his skills. He's, gone on a more linear progression. He's playing really well right now. And, yeah, I mean, I think the Fire would love to sign him to a really long-term extension. I believe he's signed through next season as of right now. And beyond that, we'll see.
Yeah, I think he deserves it. I mean, I was reading a few things from Matt Doyle on MLSsoccer.com, and he actually had a comparison between Chris Brady and Patrick Schulte from Columbus. That his shot stopping numbers have been good, but that his passing numbers have been better this year. I'm talking about Brady. So I really think he has the potential. Maybe not this World Cup cycle, but look towards 2030. That's a good possibility.
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, in playing in Berhalter's system is forcing Chris to get better at his passing. I think that's like the best thing that could have happened to him. Even though it hasn't gone linearly, I'm still hopeful that one day we will have a trio of similarly aged Western suburban Chicago goalkeepers in Slonina, Brady, and Celentano, all in a USMNT squad together, just because it would be fun. Obviously, Gaga's career is in a weird spot. Celentano, I don't know what you would think, is maybe plateaued a little bit. He's a good player, but he hasn't looked like a future national team player as much in the last year or so. And again, that goalkeeper competition is kind of wide open, but and if you're not in the top 3 or 4 names, it's going to probably be pretty hard, especially if Diego Coaching at Barcelona, who's 19 right now, I believe, if his development continues as it's been going, he's coming for all these guys' job at some point. And so when you look at that age group, there's probably only room for 1 or 2 of these guys to get significant minutes. Schulte's in the driver's seat right now, but I guess time will tell.
I really think that you're going to see some battles, but Celentano might be on the outside looking in. He's going to have a massive improvement over a small amount of time that we saw in the likes of Matt Turner accomplish. So to be deep on that one, we'll see. Let's look a little bit more at the team that's composed ahead of Chris Brady's. Look at some of the additions that Chicago has brought in. The one that jumps off of the paper right away is Jack Elliott. Brought in free agency from Philadelphia. Also, you mentioned Joe Bamba, transferred from Celta de Vigo in Spain. Some other big names there. I'm seeing Philip Zinkernagel. I'm seeing Romy Kwame. Some big names that have hit the starting lineup. I guess the big ones are Bamba and Zinkernagel. They've been scoring both sides of Hugo Kuipers there. How well do you feel they fit with Kuipers?
I mean, it's been kind of a truism from even before the season started. Get Kuipers better wingers, and Kuipers will score more goals, and that happened immediately. He had a 4-game scoring streak already this season. I think they're still kind of working out the kinks. Bamba's a very dangerous guy on the ball. I think he's maybe dwelt on the ball a bit too much at times, but he certainly draws defenders' attention and can pick a pass. Zinkernagel's just a really solid floor setter. I think he's a guy who he came from Club Bruges, but he's played the most of his soccer with Bodo Glimt, the team from Norway, who've kind of become darlings of European continental football in recent years for the meteoric rise they've had despite existing north of the Arctic Circle. He's just been a really, really solid player. He's versatile. I don't know if come the end of the season, he's a guy who will be starting for this team, because if the Fire go out and fill their final DP spot in the summer, that's, it's going to either be a number 10 or a right winger or some hybrid of the two. And Zinkernagel's kind of been playing in that right half space. So that's kind of his spot. But I liked him a lot, and he brings a veteran presence that this Fire team hasn't had a lot of in recent years. Same with Jack Elliott. That's the sort of free agent signing the Fire have never really made. I guess you can kind of compare it to Kel Acosta last year, but Elliott's a guy who, he's a former best 11 player. He's a guy who's going to slot right in. He's, solid enough on the ball. He's tall. And again, leader, veteran guy. And the Fire get to be a beneficiary of Philly kind of tearing it all down and turning over a new leaf. On that note, Jonathan Bamba is just a piece of great business. He was essentially just a salary dump for Celta Vigo, who are in, like a lot of Spanish teams, it seems, of some financial trouble.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's a guy they signed for 20 million euros 18 months ago. And they just sold him to the Fire for 2. Basically to get the salary off the books. Now we'll find out how much the Fire are paying him. My guess is it's a lot. Mm-hmm. Because given that the Fire had to pay a very small transfer fee, they paid $2 million for a guy who was probably worth 7 or 8 in the current market. And so, no, that's great work by Berhalter and the rest of the Fire staff in saying, hey, here's a really talented guy we can get for way less than he's worth. And so in that context, I think it's easier to have some patience about his development and how quickly he's coming onto this team. The other problem is Brian Gutierrez has been unavailable a lot. And Guti's been, when he's on the field, he's playing as a left-sided number 8, the midfielder who gets the furthest forward. And so he's supposed to be near Bamba a lot and kind of be that guy between Bamba and Kuipers. So I don't think it's really fair to judge Bamba's impact until he can get more minutes, interchanging with the likes of Kuipers, Guti, Andrew Gutman, who's had a very good start to the season. Again, I think you got to let this bake for a while.
Yeah, former FCC great in my mind, Andrew Gutman. I'm going to sneak this in here because it came within the last 24 hours. The whole Kevin De Bruyne to the Chicago Fire rumor. I mean, is that out of left field for you guys? Any smoke with that Fire?
It seems that there's smoke. The Fire are there's a few teams. Obviously, there's a handful of teams in MLS who are willing to spend money. Have an open designated player spot. There are a couple number 10 type candidates who are veterans in Europe who are eyeing MLS this summer. De Bruyne is one. Mm-hmm. Thomas Muller is another. Mm-hmm. LAFC might make their planned run at Antoine Griezmann. Mm-hmm. Giovanni Reina is going to be on the market this summer, and I'm sure a few MLS teams are at least giving him a phone call to see if he's willing to come stateside. So there's a lot of these number 10-y half space attacker types who might be available to these teams. And so the question is, who goes where? LAFC have a partnership with Bayern Munich, so it sounds like they have opened to talks first with Muller. But if they want Griezmann, then that's not going to work. Miami have De Bruyne's rights, but they currently don't have a spot for him on the roster. NYCFC would be a logical place for him to go with the City Football Group connection, and Maxi Morales is ancient. But again, the Fire they're a team with a position of potential need. They have the open designated player spot, and they have an owner in Joe Mansueto who will green light whatever the cost is. And so that's how you get to a place where the Fire can be involved. And also they now have the street cred that even though it wasn't successful, they made a legitimate effort to sign Neymar. Like they got in the room with Neymar's agent and his dad. That's a meeting that happened, and Neymar wasn't interested, which was always likely to be the issue there. But no, the Fire have made it known that they're going to be aggressive, that they are up for signing a big name, and that they're willing to pay the wages necessary to do it. Again, there's lots of dominoes that have to fall there. That you've got De Bruyne has to be definitely interested in coming to the league. You've got to sign his rights away from Miami, and the Fire currently don't have a lot of GAM to do that with. Could you use cash for that sort of thing? I don't know in the new rules if you can. Could they make another move by selling somebody within the league or trading somebody within the league to generate some GAM? Lots of questions, but the Fire are a team where I think he would fit, and they have the financial and roster flexibility to sign somebody like that. So I mean, it's fun. I'd love it, but I'm not getting too excited about it until a couple of the prior dominoes that need to fall first.
Yeah, there's going to be a few dominoes that are going to definitely fall, I think, with that summer window opening up. The rumors of Thomas Muller perhaps having some connections to Cincinnati. Don't know how that fire is going to burn out either, but I think other teams have a foot in the door for that. But we're also talking about the future. Let's talk a little bit more about the immediate future here, and it's this game coming up on Saturday. We have a few fans going up there, so I hope they enjoy the trip to Soldier Field. But let's take a look between our teams. I mean, it looks like how things were set up last week, that there was almost a 4-3-3 sort of setup with maybe Kuipers heading up a little bit further to turn it into a one-pronged attack. But once again, with the two, potent offensive pieces on both sides. Is there an IR report that has come out considering some of the players?
We don't have an official report as of yet, but Joe Chatz, who covers the team for OnTap Sportsnet, has been pretty good about providing training updates when he goes. Sam Rogers, who missed the last game, is back in training. My guess is he will not start. I assume you'll see Tehran and Elliott off the back of their very good game against Miami, that they'll return to the lineup. Gutierrez, another week healthier, probably will be capable of going 90 minutes this week, you would think. We're not sure what the decision was with Colin Acosta not playing last game until late. He's working his way back from a hamstring injury, so he's another week closer to full fitness. The big note is that new U22 Portuguese right back signing, Leonardo Barroso, remains out of training. He has suffered a couple knocks already this season. We don't know the extent of the seriousness. We'll see if we get anything from Gregg Berhalter at his weekly press conference tomorrow about his status. So I would expect minimal change to the lineup. The one spot is Mauricio Pineda playing at the base of midfield. Does he keep that spot? Does he rotate out? Because the way the Fire were playing in that last game was a little different, where they had Omari Glasgow, young international from Guyana, who's kind of come up through the Fire 2 system, playing nominally as a right back and doing all things considered pretty well, getting really high into the attack on the right side. Of course, Gutman does the same on the left. So in a lot of ways, you had Mauricio Pineda dropping in between the center backs to form kind of a back three in possession with Orehel and Gutierrez ahead of him. It was a pretty attacking group, all things considered, but then dropping into a 4-4-2 block out of possession. Against a team like Cincinnati, I'm intrigued to see, given that Cincinnati generally play a back three. I'd kind of expect that Berhalter will want to fill the midfield a bit and try to overwhelm that area of the pitch. So I'm interested to see how the Fire approach this game, because Cincinnati to me is an interesting team in that, between Kevin Denke and Evander, you guys brought in some really serious attacking firepower this season. And now, after some struggles early, it seems like Pat Noonan has found a way to turn this unit into a team that grinds out 1-0 results. It's been an interesting year given the way this roster is constructed.
I think a lot of people, when they saw Evander and Denke included in this team, thought that they'd be blowing doors off of opponents. I don't see that right yet. I actually think that this team is more constructed to be a defensively sound team. Gilberto Flores is a big pickup, the under 22 initiative, has been playing lights out, great defense. Lucas Engel, a surprising addition, playing really well, not only as a left wing back or a left back, but sometimes left center back. And then you've got pieces in there that are coming back. You've got Nick Hagland, who I felt should have been on team of the match day, playing lights out and closing down the likes of Christian Benteke last week. Then you've got the big name, Matt Miazga coming back to play alongside Miles Robinson. It's a defensively sound team. And that's why I'm leaning to, I'm going to give my prediction first, if you don't mind. I'm leaning towards a low scoring game. I really don't see much offense going through either defense, mainly because I think there's still some offensive pieces that are not 100% on our squad. Evander probably isn't going to play a full 90. We're not going to see Yuya Kubo. We're not going to see Corey Baird. Obi Nwobodo is probably out as well, but I think you got a good replacement in Brian Anunga. So I'm going to call it a 1-1 draw. I think this is going to be the hardest of the road games that they've had to go through so far this season.
So 1-1 was my initial thought as well. And the more I think about it, I think I'm actually going to lean that 0-0 is a bit more likely. If I've got but 0-0 or 1-1, I think feels right. Again, this is a very solid defensive Cincinnati team. The Fire is still working out all of their attacking combinations and not exactly knowing how fit everyone is. I think this is going to be a game where the Fire have the ball a lot and are able to kind of control that midfield battle. And if I was Cincinnati, I'd be trying to play on the counter with guys like Orejano and Denke trying to get in behind those fullbacks for the Fire that are going to get really high. And can you get Tehran? Can you get Elliott stretched toward the sidelines and create some space? Yeah, I think it's going to be tactically an interesting game because if there's also a version of this game that ends 4-3, where somehow we get into a place where both coaches have decided, screw it. We feel like we've got some decided advantage each in particular areas of the field, and we're just going to try to exploit whatever we feel that is. And yeah, I think, though, if you're the Fire, you don't want this game to be a track meet. I think the Fire are capable of playing a game like that. You look back at the Vancouver game. That game was very track meaty, and the Fire managed to find their way through it. But no, I'm with you. I think this is going to be a game where the Fire successfully slow the pace down a bit, but that back three in particular of Cincinnati is just going to prove to be too hard a wall to break down. So 0-0, 1-1, something along those lines feels right to me.
I mean, 3-3 wouldn't be out of it. I remember a few years ago, you guys were up 3-1, and then we poured on 2 at the end to draw.
Well, that was still when they were playing out in Bridgeview. That was, I believe, one of the last couple of games that Veljko Paunovic coached for the Chicago Fire. The Fire blew multi-goal leads to the Crew in Cincinnati in consecutive weeks.
That's right.
At home. And it was the most deja vu thing ever. It was the last 20 minutes of that game, and his name's going to escape me, veteran MLS striker who his goals per 90 against the Fire, he played was both Corey Burke was one of those guys, and then there was somebody on Cincinnati at the time as well who I can't remember who was. For a long time there was a couple of journeyman MLS backup strikers who just absolutely loved scoring goals against Chicago, just with amazing regularity.
It wasn't Santos, was it? It wasn't
Santos.
Santos.
There it is. Yeah. So yes. Yeah. Santos and
Santos scored, and then there was a brace from Junior Moreno, who we did not expected brace from Junior Moreno in this game. But some names like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a very different time in Chicago Fire lore. Yeah, certainly. That was a bit different. So yeah, I think I'm interested to see the Cincinnati team in person. I'm kind of intrigued by how they've built this roster, in that, the defense is excellent, the attack is really flashy, and the midfield needs a lot of help. And I think Cincinnati's an interesting case study in the limits of MLS roster building, and shows the trade-offs you have to make to construct a roster in this league, where you can't just stock it. Even Miami have some significant weaknesses. So I'm interested to be able to watch Cincinnati in person to kind of try to get a sense of what they are improving and what's starting to go right for this team and how they've been able to kind of turn their fortunes a bit and figure out with this group of players what the most effective way to play is, even if it is less flashy than I'm sure Cincinnati fans hoped and that neutrals like myself were kind of expecting.
I think we're waiting for the training weights to come off of Luca Orshano. I think once it comes off of him, then you're going to see a game that's really made for glitz and glamour on the offensive side. But we can wait, I think, a few more weeks for that to happen. Anyways, Alex, I did want to thank you for your time. We were about butting up against 35 minutes. I know that both of us, we watched a pretty undramatic, I want to say, UCL quarterfinal. So we have a little bit, I think, of soccer in us right now. Where can we find you on social media and listen to your podcast?
You can follow me at A Campbell Sports, basically everywhere. Most active on Blue Sky, X, Instagram, all those places. I do some writing occasionally. I have a Substack just at alexcampbell.substack.com. The CHGO Fire podcast is twice a month. You can get that wherever you get your podcasts and watch it live on the Tuesdays we do the show on the CHGO Sports YouTube page. CHGO Stars, the NWSL podcast, is currently once a month. Likewise, live on YouTube and then wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow the podcasts on both Blue Sky and X as well.
Yeah, and we'll put those links down in our show notes here. You can follow us on many of the same locations on Blue Sky and X. Go to Cincy Soccer Talk. Go to our website at cincinnati-soccertalk.com. Become a Patreon. Join us and predict some of these games like we like to do. Also, find us on your favorite podcasting platform. My podcast is there. We have Coach show up a few times. The main show gets broadcast there as well. All a good time for everybody. But as far as this week's podcast is concerned, thank you very much for your time, Alex. Keep your kit clean, and we'll see you if people are going up there. Say hi to Alex if he's in the stadium. Thank you very much for your time, Alex.
Yeah, thanks as always for having me, Jeff. Haven't decided yet if I'll be in attendance on Saturday. Might be a bit of a fair weather media member on the day, depending on how things are shaping up. But no, looking forward to the game. Safe travel to everybody from Cincinnati making the trip, and look forward to when we do this again next year.
Yeah, get a beef sandwich or a slice of pizza up there. Thank you for your time, Alex, and we'll see you guys next time.